All right, thanks for coming out this evening. Before we open up our study session for November of 2025, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence, followed by a pledge to our flag. Please feel free to join me if you'd like. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, call to order the November 4th, 2025 study session of the Sumner County School Board. First item on the agenda, everybody's favorite acronym, discussion of the TISA report.
All right, so each year we are required by TCA to share our accountability report template, and then we have to upload it and share it with the state. The comptroller, I believe, collects all these and shares it with the legislature. So we just wanted to share a copy with you tonight, see if you have any comments, and then we'll have to vote on it in the November voting session. So, you know, if you look at a lot of these are our academic goals. So just so you know, there's now 3 or 4 different ways that schools are held accountable. This is the account. So TISA is the student funding formula. So this is the money that we receive per student from the state. And so there's an accountability measure that requires us to have certain goals that are publicly forward-facing to the public. And then certain metrics that we're required to meet. So one being, like, you know, the first one, for instance, is 3rd grade ELA proficiency, shooting for 70% of students being proficient on 3rd grade ELA TCAP by 2028. And then that's kind of stepped out to get there over 3 or 4 years. So, you know, you can see the other goals there, you know, about literacy expectations, college and career readiness, 21 or higher on the ACT composite. So those are all there, and then it kind of walks through those and then talks about the way funds have been designated budgetarily to cover the cost of different improvements and investments that we've made using TISA funding. So it's a lot in there. It might be something, you know, my kind of thoughts were we would give this to you tonight. If you have any immediate questions, I'll be happy to walk it through, but it's probably something you want to look at. You may have some more questions at the voting session. And if you have any questions between now and then, if you just want to shoot those to me, we can get Ms. Skinner, Dr. Miller to respond to those at the next meeting. But it's a lot of detailed information.
Mr. Lancaster.
Yeah, the goals, were they the ones that were set last year when we started this? So for example, the 2028 end goal, it does not change, or you just update the...
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And can you explain, like, really briefly, does this, like, if you don't meet goal of these, does that impact your funding, and how does that impact your funding at all?
It doesn't impact your funding. It's just a forward-facing document. I mean, there's accountability in the sense that it's public and we measure where we are, because, you know, there's a whole different accountability system that our schools operate under. That's where you get, like, this has nothing to do with, like, the report cards and reward schools and different things like that. This is a separate, tied to the funding, but it's not, it's tied to the funding, but it's not conditioned on us receiving funding based on our performance.
Any other questions? So just one question real quick. So the TISA metrics started last year. Mm-hmm. And I know it's hard to make judgments after year one. I mean, you can look and see where you're at as far as your goals go. But I know part of the goal is for Tennessee as a whole to improve its educational rankings, you know, compared to other states in our country. Have they seen any improvements from a state level versus where they were?
Yeah, I think that there's two things going on. Like, we did see growth across the state in ELA last year. I think the other thing, if you'll just Google it, if you Google Southern Surge, there's a lot of literature out there now about how the southern states, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Tennessee in particular, invested heavily, definitely beginning before COVID, but then absolutely during COVID, investing in foundational literacy that we've talked about a lot. And what we've seen is pretty steady and strong increase in ELA scores across that time. And so, for instance, states did it obviously because each state is different. Louisiana built a statewide curriculum, Louisiana Believes, and they've invested heavily there. They've seen a lot of success. Mississippi invested in state-level reading coaches that they implemented into each district, and they had a lot of success. Alabama invested in statewide literacy coaches, and they've had success. Tennessee invested not in state-level reading coaches, but in Reading 360, so requirement that every Tennessee teacher completes literacy training, requirements on colleges of education and teacher prep programs to require literacy training as part of the core to get certified to teach. Then beyond that, investing heavily in foundational literacy, high quality instructional materials like reading curriculum to build both the ability to decode and also content knowledge, because comprehension requires both the ability to decode so you can sound out what you're reading, but then also to have the content knowledge to know the background history of what's going on. And so Tennessee probably made the most comprehensive investment, but you only have limited dollars, so they did not invest in the state level reading coaches. We had consultants and things like that were provided out of that money, but just a little bit different approach. But if you look, the southern states have really outpaced the rest of the country on NAEP, which is the nationwide test, and then just on state level performance and data also.
Thank you. Ms. Pretty?
Just curious if you could expand on the reflection from this past year and what we are going to learn from that and move forward, how we're shifting.
What was I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the first part, Ms. Pretty.
On the reflection from this last year,
Mm-hmm.
where we missed our outcome, or we missed our goal.
Yeah, I think, excuse me, I think that, obviously you see we adjusted to catch more growth this year. I think we continue to learn. So prior to, I will say, while, third grade retention in some ways has been, at least on the appearance, heavy-handed. I mean, we've not retained very many kids statewide. What it has done is shifted a tremendous amount of attention onto K-2 literacy, which did not exist before. And I think we're just now starting to see the benefits. We've been K-3 foundational literacy for 4 years now, so we're starting to see that begin to pay off in terms of teacher comfort, kids having multiple years in that foundational curriculum. I will say one of the pieces that we're trying to address, and it's interesting because I talked to a parent in another district this morning, and his child's school is seeing the same thing. We're seeing a lot of third grade teachers not want to teach third grade. And we're getting a lot of turnover in third grade. So like one of the things that we did this year was retrain all the third grade teachers in the county on the ELA curriculum, because, we did the initial training, poured a lot of attention to that in 2019, but the number of teachers that we lose each year by moves, moving to a different grade, moving into other positions, or leaving the profession, especially during COVID, is pretty high. So stepping back, going back to the foundations of that, I think that we have really drilled down on what are the specific focus areas we need to hit. The restructuring that we did last year to have special education, instruction, classroom management, behavior, CTE, innovation and CTE together at the same table. So each week, Ms. Skinner's meeting with those 4 directors. That was a very intentional investment. I think, empowering, if you've ever met with Ms. Connor, she's phenomenal at taking, sometimes I think we drown, we have so much data that it's hard to process. Anna is really good at taking all those different data points and helping principals and teachers and students understand that. So I would say the growth of our professional competency is really strong in our teachers and administrators. I think that's one piece. I think the structure, I think continuing to drill down and add resources, like even in like summer scholars, we increased the amount of reading intervention time during summer scholars. So it's good.
The elementary teams put together a pretty comprehensive professional learning plan for third grade teachers this year. It's not required, but it's optional, and they've been really well attended.
Yeah, and I think, Ms. Garrett, and jump in if there's anything else, I think that they've done a tremendous job of taking, like, what are the lessons we're learning as we run this to scale. We're getting a little bit more consistency, during the COVID years, we had a lot of influx of kids from other states and other places with, different amounts of holes and gaps and kind of closing that gap. I hope that after this coming year where we run Course Mojo to scale in 6th through 8th, there will be some learning that we can apply to elementary school as we're beginning to see, like, what does it mean to capture all this data on literacy in grades 6 through 8, and what lessons are we learning about instruction, as we look at the back end of the data on that on Course Mojo. So I think that's, there will never be a silver bullet on literacy. It's a whole series of things. I can tell you that I would say we're seeing a lot more investment in not just following the foundational literacy curriculum, but providing more resources to parents. We are piloting a new AI tool that's really pretty cool at Guild Elementary, and it provides a 15-minute tutorial lesson for parents to help them understand how to help their kids. It's connected to our curriculum, and then if the child completes 2 or 3 of the lessons during the week with their parent, and it's read aloud text, it's decodable text, then it takes the child's image and creates characters in the book. And so then they're doing read aloud, still aligned to the curriculum, but their child is like, it's like fighting a dragon, searching for treasure, different things like that. And they have some choice on what the themes are and everything. And I want to say we got our first run of data from that at Guild. I want to say it was like 86% parent participation and 55% completing multiple lessons. So that's really pretty amazing. So I think, just continue to try to find what helps move the needle to provide support for parents. Because I think every parent wants to help their child. It's just empowering them to be able to help, because it's not easy with work schedules, and ball schedules, and everything else. So trying to find ways to provide support to parents.
Anybody else? All right. Next item on the agenda, discussion regarding 25-26 student enrollment report.
Yeah. All right. So you have before you 3 documents, and I think Mr. Johnson can email y'all. I realize the bottom of the current year enrollment got cut off, and so we can post that on board docs. What's that? Okay, it's in board docs right now. Membership at the end of month by grade. If you that one, the bottom got cut off, so that shows enrollment by school by grade, and it's up on board docs right now. I apologize for the paper copy getting cut off. The first document that I'm looking at is the historic one. It's got every year of enrollment from 2004, 2005 to 25, 26. So if you'd like, we'll just kind of start and then dig in. I'll point out a couple things, and I'm sure you'll have some questions, and so feel free to jump in. So we are looking at, from last year to this year, same time frame, a decrease from 30,426 students to 30,199 students. We've tried to really dig in and say, why is that happening? And all of my initial hunches proved false. I thought maybe we would have seen a decrease in the number of EL students. Our EL population is not skyrocketing like it was. In 2018 we had 660 EL students. We ended last year with 1,900. We're still at that 1,900 mark. So our number of EL students has held pretty consistent. There are a couple factors that I think Rutherford County's enrollment decreased this year, Williamson County's decreased, and ours decreased. I think the largest contributing factor is, the median home price from 2019 to 2025 has gone, in Sumner County, has gone from $289,000 to $443,000. Interest rates have gone from 2.5% to about 6.5%. and it's limited mobility for young families with children into the county. Now, I think that you're already seeing some homes being built in Westmoreland that are under 350,000, but you just don't, I mean, Shelley, you could probably speak to this better. You don't find a home in Hendersonville now that's under $350,000. There are very few. So that's definitely contributing, and that's absolutely what they're seeing in Williamson County. Another factor is, Williamson County Superintendent shared this at the superintendent meeting, that there was actually a decrease in birth rate in 2020, so our kindergartners this year, which is interesting. Like, historically, if you've had a blackout or something like that, the birth rate goes up. Evidently, if you have 9 months of COVID, it makes birth rates go down. Birth rate in Sumner County in 2018 was 11.5 per thousand. In 2020, it dropped to 11.02. And then in 2022, it's back up to 11.49. So there's a little bit of dip in birth rate. There's a big increase in home prices and interest rates. And if you look at that, if you will look at that one at the bottom is cut off, you can see, if you'll pull the document up, and I apologize, you will see that, for instance, this year we have 2,041 kindergartners. We have 2,235 first graders, 2,237 second graders, 2,305 fourth graders. So our classes the last couple of years have generally run around 2,300, 2,250 to 2,350. And you can see that we caught a 2,000 number kindergarten class, which I think when you factor in home prices, interest rates, and then a little bit of a dip in the birth rate. Now, I think what you're going to see is this is Sumner County in terms of growth taking a breath, because if home prices go down or stay the same and interest rates go down, you'll see more people moving here. Birth rates going up, you'll probably see some natural increase there. We do have some, Dr. Hallman and his team are going to share some information about Patricia Brown, and he'll be able to hit a little bit on some of the opportunities that we see to get more students back in Sumner County schools. But that's kind of where we are now. If you look at the middle document, the one that's in color, this is the one that historically everybody's liked to see. It's our capacity data. So that has in there, let me just explain some of the categories. It's got the square footage of the school, the square foot per student, our current enrollment, 25-26, the core capacity, that's number of students in common areas like gyms and cafeterias, primarily the cafeteria, and then classroom capacity, like how many seats in classrooms do we have. And then if you look, the next one is the percentage of the core that's being used currently. Like if you put every student, could you seat every student in the cafeteria at one time? Every student in the gym at one time. 2025 classroom, you can see the where we are in terms of filling the classrooms. I will point out to you that we have only one school with a classroom issue, and that's Howard, and that's where we are using portables behind the school. The others, so we're under 100% on all of our other schools. Station Camp Elementary is absolutely one that we're going to have to watch, because if you think about it, if you take the number of elementary kids historically in Creekside and Carrollton that used to be zoned to Station Camp, that's around 500 kids, 450 to 500 kids. We pulled those out of Station Camp. Carrollton went to Beach for a couple years and then to Liberty Creek, but basically Station Camp Elementary has already backfilled. I think the trend that we're going to have to watch is that 2,000 number of kindergarten, is that an anomaly where it's a one-year run on kindergartners, or is that going to be a new norm? I've seen some things on social media and the media about why is the school population flattening out and the population of Sumner County continuing to grow. And I think a lot of that is you're seeing younger people without families move to Sumner County. You're seeing people that are in their 40s, 50s, older, that either have older children, not school-age children, and you're going to see more of that because of the home prices. Home prices increased on the tax assessment from 2019 to 2024 by 76%. That's a substantial increase that does affect ability of young families to move here. So other than that, we're in great position for current growth in Sumner County. you know, those core spaces are not really, you know, like I wish the cafeteria at Gallatin High School was bigger, but it basically means they have an extra lunch shift. It's not the end of the world. And we just actually added a bunch of new cafeteria equipment that's much better, that'll help increase the speed in that cafeteria. So that's those are the main enrollment facts. I'm happy if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Mr. Lancaster?
So we dropped 227 total. Do we know, is anybody tracking how many left, like, for the voucher program? I mean, in my head, like, you know, we're 30,000 students. There's about 1 million in the public school in Tennessee, so that's 3%. You got 20,000 vouchers, that's 600. So if that's, you know, the average, then we're below average of what we would have thought we would have potentially lost. But do we know, are we tracking that? Do we have any idea what that number is?
So that's proven challenging to track because we don't know, like we know the number of kids that left us to go to private school. That number has stayed fairly stable over the years. We don't, when on the applications, you were not asked if you were currently enrolled in public school. So I think we will get that data, but I think it will come because there was a provision in the law that held us harmless. So like a kid that left Sumner County Schools to go to private school and take the Freedom Scholarship, they were supposed to still get TISA money for them. So we should, I think it'll be interesting when we get that first run of TISA money or TISA estimate in December, January. We should get a little bit better picture because it'll be included in it should be included in there.
So we know who left to go to private school. We just don't know if that the reason they went or if they left and got a voucher.
Right, and you know, and
but we didn't see a spike of, like, normally we lose, you know, 200 kids.
no, it's pretty consistent. I would say the one area, and we're Dr. Holman, are you going to talk about the homeschool in yours or?
I can maybe answer questions here.
Yeah, go ahead.
We do have some of the information on homeschoolers. What we did see is historically our number of students that are using independent homeschool has been in the 500 to 600 range for probably the last 7 or 8 years. This year it's down to 342 students. So that actually we've seen a drop. They're using other homeschool outlets because there's a lot of advertising and marketing by the homeschool co-ops to encourage students, and it's just an opportunity for them to utilize that. So what I think you're seeing with the independent homeschool are probably more legacy homeschoolers, like they're committed to homeschooling from the very beginning in kindergarten, and they're just staying with it. That would be who I think is the 342 students in general that are using the independent homeschool. But now there's dozens and dozens of co-ops that they can participate in.
And I don't want to steal too much of his thunder because he's going to share some of the opportunities that we have with Patricia Brown Virtual in a minute. But yeah, I think the biggest increase we've seen are in these virtual homeschool cooperatives. And you know, I was talking to Ms. Skinner, and I presented to realtors last week, and one of the realtors, their child does competitive motocross, and they're gone 2 or 3 days a week some weeks. And so they've gone, you know, my nephew plays junior college soccer now, but he was virtual the last 18 months because he traveled constantly. We're seeing some lifestyle choices, so it's a different nuance of homeschool. We're seeing, I think, some of the effect of chronic absenteeism and emphasis on reducing absenteeism. Some families are moving to a virtual private school because of the pressure over attendance, and we're kind of jammed there because we're required by law to enforce truancy and attendance, and I think some families are, you know, just increasingly taking advantage of. I work from home 2 or 3 days a week, and it's really convenient for our schedule to do virtual homeschool, and it's affordable, and that's a real thing that's in the marketplace right now. I feel personally that we've lost more kids there, Mr. Lancaster, to your question, than we have on the vouchers. I suspect, my hunch is that a lot of the vouchers in Sumner County went to kids that were already enrolled in private school. But that's a hunch.
If we look at the enrollment, I mean, I would, I could say the data backs up, the biggest thing, like you say, is I've got friends that are, 10 years younger than I am, 15 years younger than I am, that, buying a house in this area is tough. And you look at Stacy Kemp's, where other places are going down, they're going up, but then you got all those apartments that have been built around
And still
there.
some affordable housing over there.
Yeah, but it's, I do think we could see, we would see definitely a growth if we, especially a lot of these older communities, I say older communities, older Hendersonville.
More mature.
Older Hendersonville areas where, those schools are still
Mhm.
declining.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, we talked last year, it's going to be weird for a while because of the home prices and the interest rates and everything, because you're not typically where you've seen pretty consistent turnover in neighborhoods like, around Station Camp, around Burris, around Liberty Creek, or like, for instance, Creekside for about 10 years always had 280 elementary kids in it. And when families would get up to a certain age, they would typically move to a larger home in a different community and somebody else would move in. Now those homes have gone from 300,000 to 550, 600. I think you're going to see those neighborhoods finally start to age up like a neighborhood traditionally does. But I think you're definitely seeing that effect of home prices around Indian Lake, around Jack Anderson. Because Jack Anderson, I don't know what the median home price is, but I would guess it's well over $600,000. And that may be low.
And it's declined,
Mhm.
didn't decline much, but
A little bit.
from where the high of it, it's
Mhm.
come down. So, all right, thanks.
Mr. Evans?
Yeah, a little bit more about the homeschool. The numbers that we're able to track is specifically if they enroll in a homeschool program that we recognize by the state or by the county. Like, how is that? My question is, it'd be interesting to look at kindergarten and first grade numbers in the last couple of years. Obviously, as a young parent myself, it's a very trendy, not in a bad way. There's a lot of families that are opting for the co-op route, or they're picking that as their option, especially at the kindergarten, pre-K, first grade level. I'm just wondering, do we have numbers to look at from the last couple of years, specifically kindergarten and first grade, and if they're not enrolled in one of our trackable institutions, like how do we know? There's not really a way for us to track that, right?
We actually can track it. There has to be a report submitted to the state twice a year, in December and in May, and we have a pretty good sense. It's interesting the way that the state wants us to describe it is by age, not by grade. So it becomes a little bit complicated in determining what the grade band distribution is. The majority of our homeschoolers are K through 5. And it's not a 50%, it's more like 55, 60% of our students are in that range. As just to share, as someone, my wife and I, we did homeschool our children. There's a lot of, like you shared, there's a lot of reasons why parents choose to do that. With content issues, culture, connection, parents just want to have that time with their children because of the ability to work from home and things of that nature. So it is an opportunity for them to have that time with their children. I think COVID changed the conversation when they saw what they could do. So, but it's interesting to me that our independent homeschool numbers have gone down significantly this year, and it's balanced out with the other schools, but I think that's a change for us to look at what's happening there and why they're choosing to do others, and I think we have an opportunity for them to join us.
Yeah, I just bring that up because I know, it's a conversation I'm having with my friends, when they're asking me about not only what they're going to do with their kids. We look at kindergarten next year for our daughter. It's just been a topic of conversation more recently that I've caught in my generation of parents. So I just know that that's going to be, whatever we're doing, obviously from a public perspective, I just don't see that going away. I think you'll see more opportunities kind of growing, but I think we're ahead of the curve there about what's coming. But just that it's a reality. That's a conversation that comes up pretty frequently.
Well, I think, Mr. I think what we have to do is change the way that we, I agree with you completely. I think these conversations are happening because I think that COVID changed, I would argue that COVID changed the way that high school students approach high school. I absolutely think it changed the way that parents think about, especially early grades education. And I think that what we have to do, I'm excited about some of the work that Dr. Hallman and his team have started doing is like, you know, if we're being honest, like, we haven't always had, I think in Sumner County, we've actually supported homeschool parents and families the best we can. But if you run that out nationwide, there's always been a little bit of animosity between public schools and homeschools. And I don't think that we've necessarily had that. We've always tried to support as a viable option for parents. But I do think that what's going to happen is there's going to be the opportunity, especially as kids get older, to say, you know, let's talk about ways where we can collaborate together and work together. We're already doing it in sports. We're already doing it in ROTC. Let's look at other opportunities for where we can come together, because I think, like, you know, ultimately our community's strongest when we're providing everything for parents. So I appreciate Mr. Murphy saying that, because I think that that's absolutely, I think Dr. Hallman and his team are really looking into ways we can do that. I think that what'll be interesting at the elementary level is you know, I think a lot of it is just education. I've had any number of conversations with parents that have moved here from other states that came from places where they didn't approve of the way the schools were run there, and they naturally have some concerns about our schools. I spent last Friday before our last board meeting, or maybe it was the Friday after our board meeting, I spent an hour and a half with a family. They had one child that was in school and one child that they were homeschooling. And it was a really fascinating conversation. And, you know, just listening and hearing, I would like to get out and talk to a lot more parents just to hear, you know, kind of what their perspectives are. But I think some of the times, like to what Dr. Hallman said, in those early grades, sometimes it's lifestyle choice, but sometimes it's like, I just want my kids home with me. And I think some of that is a response after COVID and all the craziness, just to say I feel safer when, you know, I mean, I'll tell you, like, my daughter is 22, almost 23, and she was at the University of Virginia yesterday, and they had a false alarm on a school shooter, and she texted and said that, you know, the exterior doors were locked. It makes me thankful for our schools because of our commitment to safety, but they had taken a belt because you couldn't lock the interior doors on the lecture hall, and so they had taken their belts and belted the doors shut. And I'm thinking, like, it makes you jumpy even with a 22-year-old. It absolutely make you jumpy with a 5-year-old. So I think that the things that we can do in those early grades is just continue to provide the transparency that we always have, but then also, I think, communicating all the things that we're doing for safety, continuing to address, you know, I think one of the big things driving some of that in elementary now is behavior. And, you know, they're working really hard to kind of come up with some solutions towards that as well. But I think just having those open conversations, and I think just removing, it should not be adversarial between any parent in Sumner County and us. Like, let's just sit down at the table and figure out where we can work together and find common solutions. But I appreciate you bringing that, because I do think that that's a very real thing.
Yeah. Can I add on to that? Just as a parent, when I moved here, one of the concerns I had, because I knew that my wife and I, when we got married, we intended to homeschool, was, you know, how would we be received in Sumner County? And I think it's one of our great stories that we never talk about, is how cooperative we have always been in Sumner County, through the attendance department, through the instructional department, with the things that we do to make connections with homeschooling families, to make it work for them, and to make it work for them when they choose to come to us, to support them in the testing components that are required for independent homeschoolers. There's a lot involved in that. Some school districts put barriers in the way. We have never done that, and it's an honor to work in a school system that values the choice of the parents, and we're going to do our best to support them in those choices. So I think that's just something that people don't think about and talk about, but it is a real thing for us in Sumner County that I've experienced personally, but I've seen it over the 30 years that I've worked here. So.
Yeah, I tried it for 2 brief months when my older daughter was in kindergarten. We were getting ready to move, and we homeschooled for 2 months, and there was no way we could have done that. Like, that girl's hard-headed.
All right. Thank you. All right, Nick. I'm sorry.
This is just you know, I know that there's stories on all these, but did anything change with the zoning or anything at Madison Creek? That's the one that really sticks out. It's like dropping. And I know you're not building anything in area, so that if anything, that would be probably a aging out interest rate type issue.
Yeah, I think it's one of those that you see where, if you think like Madison Creek for a long time you had all those new subdivisions and Copper Creek and everything like that, and then it's aged up and it's hard to recover when, my house has appreciated like 115% from 2012 when we bought it. And you're talking about a limited number of subdivisions over there, really. But I think I think that in the next couple months, at some point, one of the strategic meetings we'd like to have is let's just look at all this and see what we're seeing in trends. Because, our pinch points are in that kind of Burris, Liberty Creek, Station Camp Elementary area, which we know that's the Long Hollow Corridor. That's been one that if you take Howard, Liberty Creek, Station Camp, and Burris, those elementary schools, that's where our pinch point is. Everything else we're in really good shape. So we gotta look at that and see. Station Camp Middle, it would be nice to be able to address some of they're really pinched there right now for space. But other than those areas, we're pretty we're in pretty good shape countywide, and we've got enough capacity. I'm happy because I do think that there will be growth in the northern part of the county, Portland, Westmoreland, Bethpage, but we're in really good shape there. It's funny how it's changing. Oakmont historically has been a title school, and I think the average home price around Oakmont now is around $500,000 or $600,000. I'm still amazed at Liberty Creek. When I grew up there, you could drive from Long Hollow to 25 without passing anybody and seeing a street light. Now it's dramatically different.
All right, next item on the agenda, the Patricia Brown Virtual Academy update.
I've already introduced Dr. Hallman to y'all, but I did not share his fun fact with you, which is really interesting. So he was the first administrative assistant for Pat Brown at E.B. Wilson in 1998 and 99. He met his wife Billy there because her mom was a teacher. And so now he's doing things for the Patricia Brown Virtual Academy, so I think that's a really cool connection.
We're going to have another of these nights where we're all going to share our own David Hallman fun fact. But
So here's the rest of the story also. I had been studying in seminary, and Mr. Hyde had invited me to come back to the county, and I was going to be a teacher at Gallatin Middle School, inclusion special ed teacher. And within probably 2 or 3 weeks of coming back, he's like, hey, I'm going to make you an administrative intern at E.B. Wilson. And so I met Ms. Brown, and the very first day we had a faculty meeting, and she's sharing with the faculty, and then she introduces me, and I had no idea what I was supposed to say, so I shared a few things, and there were 2 ladies in the back, and they started giggling, and I thought, so I said, well, have I said something? I don't know. And one of them said, she just told me you're going to be her son-in-law. And in my head, I thought, there's not a chance that's going to happen. And so then I met Billy, and I thought, there's no need to be inflexible. We can talk. And so I think she had the same opinion of me before she met me, and things changed. So within a short period of time, we were able to start dating and moved on from there. But 4 kids later, and here we are. We just want to share briefly an update on where we're at with Patricia Brown Virtual Academy, and then share where we're moving in the future, because it does relate not only to the children who are attending now, but also this larger conversation about enrollment and options for us as a district and what we're offering. So when you look at our data, we've had a small amount of growth from last year to this year. And I wanted to give some context for that. One is we are still in the transition period of students that were enrolled at E.B. Wilson who have stayed with us, and they are finishing up. And you're going to see this in the data probably over the next 2 years, where graduation, last year the majority of our graduates were at the end of the year, and then this year we have a very small number of graduates. Part of that is related to our enrollment, our graduation requirements of 22 credit hours. So we're going to see more and more of our students. They're going to finish in December. But we are moving from our students who came from E.B. Wilson to an entirely new student body made up of students from across the county. We were talking earlier today, at E.B. Wilson, 80% of the students who attended E.B. Wilson were from Gallatin. If you look at our numbers now, it is mixed across the entire county. So we have students from Westmoreland, from Liberty Creek, from White House, Portland, Beach, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Station Camp. All of our schools are fairly evenly represented, and I think we're going to see more of that. One of the other factors that's a change for us is last year we had 2 students that were freshmen. And typically at E.B. Wilson, we had very few students. When I was there, we had no students that were freshmen. But I think over the years, they've had a few. Well, last year we had 2 students. This year we have 8 students. That's something that's going to continue to grow. As you're going to see more and more of that as the kind of the distribution of students across the grade levels is going to change. So we haven't, up to this point, we have done 0 advertisement for Patricia Brown. And all of our students have come primarily internally, or students just sharing their story with others. We have multiple students who have come to us from homeschool, whether it's independent or one of the homeschool co-ops. And then because of what we offer through our platform, and I do want to say from the work that Ms. Soulier does to support those students, and they know they're going to be supported through what she does for them, that they are sharing that story with other students. What we have not done is any kind of advertisement on social media or any other outlets, and that's about to change for us. We're going to be starting enrollment conversations with students for the spring semester, and we anticipate growing by 30 or more students for the spring semester. This is where I think there's a significant opportunity for us to encourage other students that have been using, whether it's private school or homeschool, to reevaluate that decision. For my family, when we were homeschooling, it was going great. My wife is the most brilliant person I've ever met. She is phenomenal, but she would be the first to tell you, when our children reached middle school, for 4 children, is overwhelming. And I think that's one of the things that's going to happen for homeschool families, especially those legacy type homeschool families, is when they get up in those grades, it becomes more and more complex to provide the rigor and the opportunity for those students. And the virtual school environment has changed. It used to be that a virtual student could not participate in athletics. That was changed last year. So our students, if they want to, they can participate at their home school. So it gives them another opportunity to make a connection with those students and with their athletic opportunities that they haven't had before. Last year we only offered dual enrollment courses. This year we're going to add some honors courses this spring. We're going to work through that, make sure that we know what we need to do to support those students, and then we'll add to that moving forward. We'll also begin looking at the process of opening up the AP All Access for our students. I think we talked about that last spring when we met. But we are going to make an effort now, because we feel very confident in what we're doing and our ability to have the capacity to support our students, to seek students that are not internal from any of the high schools, but external to our school system, for them to have the opportunity to take advantage of PBVA. And I think it's going to be an area of growth, maybe 30 this spring, but as we get more and more students in, that number is going to increase, and I think it'll increase rapidly. Any questions?
Mr. Lancaster?
So a couple questions. One, what is the, capacity that y'all have, or y'all have kind of limit yourself potentially, or, right now it sounds like it's like, wait, we can take whatever, but is there a capacity to the virtual academy now, or do we have a number like, hey, we can't go over X,
Yeah, right now our capacity that is just an internal capacity that we've set of 100 students, and that's what we want to get to this year. And that is driven by just the staffing support for the students. So Mrs. Soulier is working as the online coordinator for the entire district for all of our online learning.
which includes PBVA. And then we were able this year to add a halftime counselor. And that, I think, is a difference maker for us, providing the connection with the students, because that is one of the issues with virtual that we have to be able to address, is how are we continuing to make face-to-face contact, whether it's through Zoom or not. We want to make contact with these students so that we're invested in them, and that increases their investment in us. So as we move forward to go past 100, I think the only limitation is just the staffing of being able to support those students. There's no limitation by the state on our numbers, though. So we could be at 500, and some of the virtual academies across the state have 300, 400, 500 students in them.
So when we talk about, like, okay, you could, if you do this, and now sports is, you could play baseball or basketball or whatever, and be virtual. You would go to whatever school you're zoned for, just like homeschool. What about other schools? Like, for example, do these kids that go to the virtual academy, do they still have, like, a senior prom type? Is there other, like, extracurricular stuff that they're able to participate in, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's one of our, like, we know that they're going to ask that question when they come in for our conversation with them. So there's a couple of angles on that. One is they can fully participate in going to any activities at their home school. So if we have a student who attended Westmoreland High School and they were invited to the prom, they can absolutely participate in that. And then as far as clubs at those home schools, what we've said is that is a building level decision, and we've had students that were in FFA and things of that nature, and we've given them the opportunity to have that conversation. We will support them in that, but that's a building level decision from the other high schools. And as far as, like, for us right now, we're limited in our numbers, so we haven't had the conversation about a prom for our students, but as we grow in our numbers, that might be a different conversation. But right now, we don't have ours. So.
And I guess my final question, being a money man, is there any difference from a TISA standpoint, from a virtual academy student, from a regular student in traditional classroom?
So we're going to get the full base funding for those students. And then if they have any of the weighted categories, we're going to get that. So for instance, if they take a CTE course, then we get the benefit of the CTE weighted edition for them.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah, and I think the TSSAA is changing their rules. Like when they first started allowing homeschool students to play for a school, I think rightfully, because like there have been other places where that's been abused to move the best athletes into one place. They limited it to where you could play if you were a homeschool student, but you had to play in the school zone where you lived. They are now expanding that to give homeschool students the same transfer rules that students in a traditional school have. Like right now, the TSSAA last year expanded that to include like one request for a transfer. Used to, if you played a sport, you started your 9th grade record, if you transferred without moving, you lost a year of eligibility. Now they give kids one free transfer, but you have to request it based on mental health factors other than athletics. From what I have heard, it's probably just going to go towards, that's proven really hard to manage for the TSSAA, so I think they're looking at just giving every student one free transfer. They are talking about doing it in the summer. So Florida currently has a transfer rule where if you're not the starting quarterback at the end of 2 days, you can transfer schools. If your team's bad in week 9, you can transfer to a winning team. It's gotten rather chaotic in Florida, so Tennessee's trying to avoid that and looking at almost like a transfer portal like in college, but it being in the summer. But they are going to extend that to homeschool students as well.
So real quick, Mr. Evans, just one question following up on what Mr. Lancaster was asking about as far as numbers for the virtual academy. Do we think when we open the Innovation Center and you have programs like aeronautics and other things that are more specialty CE type courses or curriculums or learning paths, do we think that might lead to additional interest or attendance in the virtual program because, depending on someone's schedule, they may want to be in that program in the afternoon, but, in the day they can't be at their home school in Portland or Westmoreland and then over here later in the afternoon or vice versa.
Yeah, I think with funding moving to the student instead of BEP, it gives us a whole lot more opportunity to think creatively about how we engage students in the county. And I think that, for instance, the easiest thing for us to do is if someone wants to come out, if a family wants to come out of homeschool and attend Patricia Brownlee, I think that there will be a huge number of people that are doing one of the virtual homeschools and paying for it because they don't know about Patricia Brown. I think once we advertise it, parents feel comfortable with our brand and what we offer, because I think that I see a lot of immediate ways where we could partner, and I think we as a board, or y'all as a board, will have to think through, like, how do we want our policy to look? Because, for instance, every Tennessee student gets 15 hours of dual enrollment. I have no idea if I would guess that that's really hard for a homeschool student to enroll in. That's an area where we could partner. We have a lot of capacity there. It would help Vol State, it would help us. I think the Innovation Center also is an area where we can create, if kids want to participate in things that we're offering in Sumner County, and we have the space, I think that it's really easy for us to work out some kind of model or support or something to make that possible for families and then support them.
Mr. Evans?
Actually, that kind of leads me to exactly my question. I think we've done obviously a great job with sports, but those offerings currently, what's our offering look like for kids that want to do band, chorus?
Yeah, I would say the hard thing about chorus and band, and this has kind of been, we had a lot of conversations internally during COVID when we had, the first year, we only closed that 9 weeks and then we opened up, but we did provide a virtual option. And, one of the things we ran into was band and chorus were harder. Sports were easy because for the most part they were after school.
Yeah.
Band is harder, as a student because it's a class during the day. So I think there's a pathway for that. It's going to be I think it's a lot easier to do it at Patricia Brown, to have a partnership there for parents that want to stay virtual and keep their children at home. I think it's easy for sports. I think it's easy for the Innovation Center. I think things like band and things like that where there's a during the day component, I think we can work it out.
Yeah.
But I think it's that's going to almost come down to a family, school. To me, that's one of those things where we would need to give the flexibility to schools to sit down with parents and work out something, because it'd be hard to regulate from here because in one school that might be first block, another school it might be third block. They just take a little bit of, and it's all easy. It's not an obstacle. It's just a conversation that has to take place.
Right. But we would still offer, I'm trying to make, not accommodations, but it's not off the table for families to pursue that if they want that for their student.
Yeah, it's not right now, but
Not
it's
right now,
something
but we
we
need
could
to work
certainly
towards.
do. Yeah,
Okay,
we could
I
certainly
agree.
look at it.
Cool.
All right.
All right.
That's it.
Yeah, and I think in this day and time, anytime we can build those connections across the table, it's just good. And really proud of the work that that Dr. Hallman and his team at Cellular have done. They've done a tremendous job of really, someone said this earlier, I think Mr. Lancaster, you said, what's the limit on our capacity? It really is. What I appreciate that we have done is we could easily run this to 500 or 600 and just pull TISA money. The market's out there. People want a reputable, one of the chief competitors out there is a company called, hopefully I won't get in trouble for saying this, but Easy Peasy. I don't know if you would want your high school transcript to say Easy Peasy, but it's out there. And I think, we can offer families, such great opportunity, I think especially in high school to partner. And I think that as we can market that and connect and communicate, really the only limitation is us just staffing it, because what they have done exceptionally well is if you've ever worked with Rachel over the last couple of years with virtual education, you're going to get a quality education. And those courses are not easy. So I love the fact that they've coordinated and provided the support where you're getting a quality education, but you're also getting a tremendous amount of support. Some virtual schools, when they first started, say 8-10 years ago, had abysmal performance ratings. And I'm thankful that they've done a tremendous job of keeping a high quality product and us growing a little bit slower than we could have. to get it right and figure out the nuances of it. And I'm excited to see what comes ahead.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the playground update.
Hey, this is right here. Okay, I'll be fast. So y'all haven't, Ms. Daniels hasn't spoke to y'all yet, so I wanted you to know a little bit about her. She has served Summer County Schools for 25 years. She started as a special ed teacher, then she was a reading specialist, then a special ed supervisor, and now in her current role, she is director of exceptional ed. So her fun fact is interesting also. She became a Beach High School student in 1994 as a result of Hurricane Andrew. So she says she's born and bred Miami, but I say after 25 years we get to claim her as our own.
That's true.
So I wasn't prepared for a fun fact about Chris Harrison or an introduction, but Chris has been here as long as I've been here. Chris, how long have you been here? 18 years. So he worked with us for a while, and then he decided to go to Vol State for a minute. I stole him back, and he's been our purchasing supervisor for what? 2017. And Chris is an amazing guy. He's an amazing employee. Somebody was talking about Chris today, complimenting him how he literally, he always answers the phone. He gives consistent, good information. He's a solid, steady Eddie all the time, and he's very, very dependable and accountable. And so anytime we have a project like this, and also he's kind of recently stepped into a new role that he's always kind of been doing, but we're making it more official. So part of his role now is also some project management, because he's been doing that, but just wasn't part of fully recognized, and so he's stepping into that. And a fun fact is he has 2 kids that go to Westmoreland. His wife works for us. She's a nurse supervisor, and I mean, what else?
I'm a 6th generation Westmoreland.
6th generation Westmoreland and MTSU graduate.
Yeah.
That's right. Look at there.
That's what we call fun facts.
Chris's other fun fact is he's anti-fun fact. He told me. It made him really nervous. Good evening. We're happy to be here with you tonight. Chris and I have gathered all of the information that we have thus far with our committee work. We had the opportunity to meet last month with our first full membership committee, which did include some parents. I think we have one here tonight. So we'll talk a little bit about that, walk you through a little bit about our process, where we have to move next, and give you all an overview of what our current assessment of the needs are, and happy to take some questions. So as we pulled the committee together, one of the things that we had to root and ground our work in is what really is the purpose of the committee. Anytime you're pulling a committee together of people who have quite varied backgrounds, as you'll see our membership of our committee has, you really have to set the why are we even here, what are we doing, and what do we hope to get out of this. So we knew that we wanted to talk a little bit about what really do our playgrounds look like currently, what are the needs out there. We have heard there are needs, but we need to know exactly what that looks like and where that is. We knew we wanted to really talk about what does inclusivity on a playground look like, and how do we set the priorities for this team so that we can convey to the board how we want to spend that allocated money, the funds that we have currently. So that was really what we kind of rooted our work in initially, and will continue to do. So the membership in our committee, we've had a few questions about how that came to be. Multiple perspectives here on this committee. Everybody was selected because of the input that they have to provide. So we have some folks who understand how to do grant work and help us really be able to make the best use of what we're able to spend there. Of course, wanted to have principal perspective. John Mann is our principal representative on this committee. He has students in his building that have mobility needs, and so he's pretty passionate about that as well. We have some maintenance department representatives who do work on our playgrounds. In our exceptional ed department, we employ 2 physical therapists. They're phenomenal, Joy and Jamie.
They work directly with these students who have these needs. You can essentially think of the playgrounds as an outdoor classroom for those people in particular. They understand exactly what the mobility needs are for the students, how to create independence. When I tell you I can ask them about any school in this district and what the issues are in that playground, they can spit it out without even having to refer to documents. They know the playgrounds well. The same with our occupational therapist, Carmen Doris. So good perspective there. Of course, Lisa Herron, our nursing supervisor or executive director of health services, she's helped us lead the work of this committee. Chris, the other fun fact is Chris has been one of my favorite people I've met in this new role. I don't think he says the same about me, but we teamed up well. So, yes. And we have added, many of you know Andy Gilly with the Hendersonville Parks Department. Andy just wasn't able to make the last committee. He's very excited to be added to the committee. I think the Pig Fest took some of his time recently, and so he wasn't able to join. He was disappointed, but he will join us for future committee meetings. And we're very fortunate to have excellent parent perspective on our committee, Erin Kortner, as well as some additional parents who obviously advocate for their individual students but are very involved in the special needs community. So added an excellent layer to kind of humanize the work of our committee. We're very fortunate to have them join. So that is the group of people that have come together to start this work. All right, I think it's important to kind of narrow down where are these needs. When you analyze the students that we have, and this is kindergarten through 5th, preschool is sort of a separate issue that can be tackled at a different point because our playgrounds look a little bit different for our preschools. So just want to make sure that everybody's clear this is in K through 5. Essentially, we have 24 students across 14 schools that either use wheelchairs or other assistive devices. So that could be some type of a walker. We have some students who are able to utilize a walker in a wheelchair. That can just vary, and it varies as to what the nature of the mobility need is too. But that is the layout of where these needs specifically exist. It's across 14 schools. All right, I will not read through all of this, but I thought it was important to lay that out for folks so they can understand where the actual needs are, which 14 schools are we speaking of. You'll see that 2 of our schools have the highest number of students, and that's Gene Brown Elementary and Jack Anderson Elementary. I think the findings through this work, which was interesting, and even myself who I've worked in my department for 20 years, so I feel pretty knowledgeable. Sometimes you'll get surprised, I'm not surprised by a school like Station Camp Elementary because they're large, so I can think proportionately we're going to have a lot of kids there. But that was a surprise even to me that at a school like Gene Brown we had the number of students who were in need there. So the next 5 slides, you'll see each individual school laid out how many students we have who have either wheelchairs or assistive devices that they use. The current obstacles, and those were things that were provided to us through people who are actually on the ground and seeing it. Our PTs know these obstacles pretty well. I thought it was important to also gather the principal feedback as well. So for principals, it just varies. So obviously they see the current obstacles if we're missing pathways or things like that. But there are many principals out there who are already starting some of this work. They've had conversations with PTOs about making some adjustments to their playgrounds. So now we've had this conversation and they know that their schools are one of the schools that we're in discussions with about making some improvements. So you'll see the layout there. If you have any questions, just let me know. As you can imagine, this is always fluid. So that's what we know in special ed, is that we can't predict when we get students. We had a student this year that we didn't know was going to enroll in Sumner County until the week before school, and the student uses a wheelchair and is currently the only student in that school who uses a wheelchair. So that happens. And so this could change, we know that. But this is a picture of where the needs are currently. All right.
Do not like fun facts, but they do them anyway. So when we started looking at this, what's an inclusive playground going to look like? So you're going to be looking at the fact that we have existing playgrounds in place. It's equipment already there, so we have some evaluation. But one of the main things that we started looking at is the ability of the child to be able to navigate the playground area. So then you got to look at surfaces. And I've got some samples here. This would be a playground tile. This is kind of a sample of a poured in place. So poured in place is exactly like it sounds. It is also the most expensive option that you would go with. Meets all the requirements for fall and all the safety measures, but it is our most expensive. We do have this at Jack Anderson on part of their playground. The vendors, talking with them, there's mixed reviews. Both said the same thing. This has a shelf life. It wears out. They said if you notice a playground that has a star out in the middle of it or a butterfly, that's because they had to cut that part out to re-pour because it's just wore out. It's in the elements. So it expands, it contracts, water gets in it, it freezes, it expands, and it just damages it over time. Children on the swings, if you look underneath the swing areas, they're dragging their feet and it just wears it out. But we do know that we have to address the mobility part of that. We have mulch, whether it's the black rubber mulch or it's just regular playground chips. And to address that, as of now, we're using mats. Well, mulch is transient. It does not stay in put. There's all sorts of reasons. Kids kicking it is probably one of the main reasons, but it travels, it gets on the mat, and if you don't have staff there that's constantly blowing it off, that one piece of mulch with a child with a mobility issue, it's going to stop them if they're trying to navigate that themselves. So in looking at this, that is the area on the playground. So that's one of the areas that we have to consider how we want to address that. You can do mixed surfaces if we want to save on cost, but still get that child to as much of the accessibility of the whole playground, then we can do that. These vendors it's very wide open on what you can do. It's really your imagination. And if you've looked at any of the inclusive playgrounds that have been built even in Sumner County, you can lay them out and design them any way you want as long as you meet the safety standards. Then you get into equipment, and that's where we get into more expense. You have to know the equipment, because if you're going to do any of this surfacing, we have to have the equipment in place. You do not want to do the poured in place surfacing if you plan on replacing of pieces of equipment, because it needs to be the equipment set and then the surfacing put in. Otherwise, we'll be cutting out a big section and having to redo it, and that's not cost effective for us. And looking at equipment, the types of equipment, we do, obviously, as the information is provided, we do have children with mobility issues. But we also have children that have sensory issues that need calming spaces. So it's not just going to be about a piece of equipment that the child with mobility issues can get on. You're going to have calming areas that a child can go to who they're overstimulated. And they can go to those areas and there's sensory panels, and a lot of times they're facing away from the play area to kind of get their focus away from that so that they can calm themselves. I had 2 different playground vendors that recommend that. It's a simple thing. It's 3 posts and panels, and they can go up to it, and it will help them with that issue. But equipment, this is just a small sampling of the books that you can go through, and this is just from two manufacturers. If we talk to 10, I could just keep stacking them up. So we'll have to be careful and make sure that we get things that match what the board wants, what the committee wants, and what best meets the needs of our students. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about is our initial priorities. So when we're talking about starting the process, like what do we need to do? Where do we need to start? One of the things that you'll see if you go back to the obstacles and the input that we've received from principals, you have to be able to get to the play area. And we have a lot of situations where there's grass, there's obstacles. And so making sure that the playgrounds you can physically get to them is going to have to be our first priority, because anything we do on there, if we take this allocation that we have and we spend it all on the playground, but yet the kids can't get there, we've defeated the purpose of what we're trying to do. So looking at that, of course, obviously we're looking at concrete pathways, the most economical way to do it. A typical 5 foot wide, 16 foot long, and this is not hard numbers, but this is to give you an idea. It costs about $516 to do that amount of space. And so then you just run the numbers. How far do I have to go? Do I have to have landings? Costs can be added, but that is your kind of run-of-the-mill cost for a 16 foot by 5 foot wide piece of concrete. Do y'all have any questions? Julie's going to answer them.
Ms. Lancaster?
So, a couple things. One, in the grand scheme of things, what would be is the surface area versus the equipment? Like, if you had to break it out by percentage, which one's like, is it 50-50 cost wise, or is it the surface area is like 40%? You know.
It's honestly what you choose to get. I'll give you an example. So the wheelchair accessible, I call them a merry-go-round. They're not called that. Don't ever try to ask a playground person that sells it now. Call it a merry-go-round. But it's basically a chalk and roll up, and it spins around. One of those is about $40,000 installed. And that's just one sample of a piece of equipment that is available. The price, it depends on what you get, obviously who you get it from.
Right.
But generally speaking, these companies are well within range. They know what each other sells.
And you said,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, going back to the surface pieces that you brought there. Like I said, the concrete, that's, I say the easiest part, but it seems to be we've got people that can do that. We can kind of have a good idea of that. You said the port is more expensive than the tile.
Correct.
I think my question is do we know the longevity of is one board? Obviously we want what works best for the students. We want what for the money, we want what lasts longest, but we also, is one better suited for okay, well, this is a flat area. This playground's, pretty flat. So this may be a better option than this. Like, I can imagine if it's a sloped area, putting tile might be kind of hard. But can you kind of walk through, what the best you know? I mean, I'm not asking for...
I can't give you full details. I can tell you typically what the warranty is between this, and I can include turf. I just didn't bring a sample of that. 10 years. But we're seeing at Jack Anderson that it's been a little shorter than that. Now, Jack Anderson's is not completely wore out. Don't mistake me with that, but it shows signs of wear rather early. Turf is a great option, but turf will wear out. It's a manufactured item. It's going to show life. Our mulch, we have to replace it, so everything that we put on there has a lifespan. But I would give you somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 years as a good number.
But turf wouldn't meet the fall safety.
They put a padding underneath the turf to make it fit the fall requirements.
Okay, so it's not like a football field.
Right, correct.
No.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Evans?
So hearing that obviously almost every principal mentioned the pathways, and you're recognizing that being the initial priority, I mean, do we have any type of timeline or plan for initiating that, starting on?
Yes, we can
concrete?
start moving forward at any time. We wanted to have this presentation before we really started putting boots to the ground to get these kinds of things started. I'll have to get a bid in place because these numbers that I gave you, this is phone conversations. This is not public bid getting the work done. this is a bigger lift than our maintenance department can handle. Can they assist in some areas? I mean, we may have an area that's a 10-foot span. It might be hard to get a vendor to show up for those type of projects, and I won't know those answers until I get into that. But a 218-foot run, I seen on one of them, that's more than we can do in-house. So I'd have to look at a labor component. We have bids in place for the materials, and we can cover that easily through that. But the concrete pathways will not be the major expense. I wouldn't want to give you a percentage of the allocation that we have, how much, but it's going to be a low part of the cost involved.
I just feel like, obviously, with it being an initial priority, that's something that we can start on. It shows that we're moving forward on a project, especially for our parents and the public. The turf, I would push back against turf, just having worked at the Parks Department with Andy, at what we had to deal with at Mary's, and the turf we had at Vanderbilt with our football field and our athletic fields we had there. When it starts wearing out, especially in certain pieces, you have to start cutting it. It's like carpet, and it just looks bad. I mean, not everything has to be visually specific, but when you start ripping things and tearing it up, the overall value and condition of it degrades itself a lot faster. So I know they've been dealing with that at Mary's because the same places keep ripping. It doesn't matter because once you cut it that first time, it doesn't ever really stay intact. So I would personally push back from personal experience on turf.
Ms. Stewart?
What's your recommendation on which one of those? Do you have one?
These?
Yes.
No. Listening to the vendors, I've told them, we're trying to do this. We want to do the best for our kids.
Right.
But you also have dollars and cents that you have to meet. They're not going to recommend the porting place for the mere fact of the cost. And I wish I had numbers. They didn't provide me with numbers. But they all said the same thing. That is the most expensive option. It's a great hard surface. I mean, any mobility type device is going to roll over this type of stuff. This tile right here, it's kind of deceptive. It weighs a lot for a little square like it is. It's also made out of the same material, and they cut it to fit around the equipment. I don't know the cost, but it's cheaper than the porting place because the porting place is more labor intensive.
But is either one more durable than the other?
I think they're all about the same.
So, what if we covered those surfaces with a cover? And I'm thinking about longevity of both of them, either one.
It's definitely something I'd have to discuss with the vendors to see if that's an issue. One of the things too that you run into with these types of surfaces, they're rubber. They're going to generate heat.
Yeah.
And they're going to hold in heat. And if you've got a child with certain mobility issues, maybe they're on the ground, then you run the risk. If you don't have a shaded area, that this could be a burn. It could burn them, yeah. Because it does get really warm.
Well, and I know that increases cost too of covering, like a cover over it. I know that increases cost too, but I'm thinking about longevity and like you just said, the idea of it producing the heat.
Yeah. The item that doesn't generate heat, unfortunately, is the turf. But that item doesn't generate heat like these will. These are they're sitting there, they're absorbing that heat, and they're holding it in.
So is that the only color that?
Oh gosh, these things come in
so the brighter the color, the less heat.
Possibly, but it's rubber material, so it's going to hold it.
Yeah.
I'm going to bow out on that one.
Thank y'all so much. Really appreciate the work that y'all put into it. It's exciting to see good things ahead and being able to get ready and closer to move. If you've ever worked with Mr. Harrison, he, once he gets the clearance and what we want to do, he moves fast to get projects done. So really thankful for Ms. Daniel. Thank you for your work.
And I just do want to point out, I don't think there's anything that says that, obviously if you're looking at vendors and different surfaces, the more you get of a certain vendor, the cheaper it may be from a quantity standpoint. But it may be that there are some locations because of, just the design of the land itself, that maybe you, or the use, the number of students, maybe you choose a different service that might last a little longer. So I think those are all things that we want to think about. It may be not just the equipment, but I think the important thing was get the pathways, number one, and then number two, it's, we're going to have to make decisions about equipment and probably the turf structure or the ground at the same time, because you can't cut into it and put up new equipment.
I love the fact that we're talking about different surfaces that would last up to 10 years when currently we're limited in the access that we have. I think it's a great high point for us to have those conversations.
We also did discuss a combination of services, just depending on the school's needs. There may be some combination of the things that he showed you guys that we may need depending on the specific school. Each one of these playgrounds are unique, and have different needs. So I think there'll be an answer, but I think the pathways are the place to start.
Thank you. Discussion regarding recommendation for school year 26-27 Union Elementary calendar. I think a copy's here, and is just for reference. This is reviewed with Union and their staff and their recommendations. So, are there any questions? All right. Next item on the agenda is discussion regarding a revision to policy 4.6 grading system prior to first reading.
So if you look on there, it's basically the addition is for students in grades K through 8. The student score on the most recently administered universal reading screener shall also be included, along with the results of a dyslexia screener if applicable. This is a change in state law, and we're updating policy to reflect that. And I think it's just, the positive of it is it's just providing parents with more information about where their child is in terms of reading.
Questions? All right,
I
next.
was thinking about that. My roommate in college, my best friend, best man at my wedding, had dyslexia, and so I haven't lived with somebody that had it. That's really cool. So Jay, pretty cool.
Yeah, when you look at what we're able to do with foundational literacy, what we're doing now is it'd be really hard to go through elementary school and not be diagnosed with dyslexia or any reading disability. It pops up really quickly, and the faster we find it, the faster we can. The ability that we have to serve dyslexic students is really amazing.
All right, discussion regarding a revision to policy 5.301, leaves of absence prior to first reading.
I am pulling it up. Basically, what we're doing here is making some changes that are all from state law except for guardianship. So everything else on here, it comes out of TCA, and it's stuff that we have to change or we won't get reimbursed for paid parental leave. So, Craig, jump in if I miss anything. But what we did talk about, when we updated this policy to include paid parental leave, the board made some decisions that I applaud to, not just extend paid parental leave to certified employees, but to all employees. So, for the first time, and we're one of the only school districts that I know of that does this. So, if you work on the support side, you're able to take the same amount of time paid that our certified staff does. I think that's really an equitable and fair way to be. And I think that's reflected also in what we did for foster cares to support parents that are taking foster children. One of the areas we did not hit is guardianship. And so, the difference between fostering and guardianship is usually guardian is someone that's in your extended family, and you were taking over the parental rights for those children. And so what we are proposing is that we would give the same 6 weeks of paid parental leave that we give for fostering. We would also extend that to employees who are serving as guardians. Everything else is just updating based on what Tennessee Code says.
Ms. Brittany?
I'm curious, with the 6 weeks, can that be broken out over time?
Yeah, it can still, that they have to take it in 1 week increments. It can't be 1 day here, 1 day there. So that's part of the law change.
So then that leads me to ask, I see for both foster care and guardianship that it's for one placement. if a situation were to happen where a guardian took 2 weeks with one placement and then ended up with a second placement later in the year, is there flexibility to use the remaining 4 weeks?
I mean, that would have to be up to the board, I would assume. Right now, it's not written like that. I mean, fostering the same way. We just limited it to one placement per year, regardless if there were multiple placements. And that's what we originally adopted, you know, when we put fostering in. So we just mimicked the same language for the guardianships.
I would love to at least have you have a thought or give us some feedback on whether or not we could say either one placement or 6 weeks, whichever is the most, so that there's opportunity for a family to adapt if there's a different situation, but still stay within those 6 weeks.
Yeah, so, I mean, we can certainly look at it. We're not being reimbursed for fostering to begin with, so, but we can certainly look at it and mimic the same language for the other.
For guardianship.
Guardianship, yeah.
Mr. Lancaster?
Yeah, can you explain the reason on the non-consecutively, it has to be at least a week? And is that the legal law change for reimbursement?
It is, yeah.
Okay. And the reason I ask that is because the biggest issue that I've seen with the parents or the foster parents and guardian issues is you have a child that has either a medical or some sort of special issue that requires, I gotta go take them to the doctor, but I gotta go take them to a medical visit, like, you know, once or twice a month in this first year or whatever.
Yeah.
If we're not getting reimbursed for those anyway, and the reason, but the whole issue here is trying to support the employee so that they can still work here and take care of their child that's been placed in their responsibility. What, do we have an issue there?
I think that, you know, we are getting reimbursed on the paid parental, but.
Right. Again, I have no issue on the paid parental, but, you know, some of this is, we've got the paid parental part, but we also extended this to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And the more there is like just having the flexibility, like, hey, I can't take, you know, I don't need to take an extended FMLA for a specific amount of time for a health event, but I've got multiple health events throughout the year.
They're allowed to use their sick leave, obviously, and any PL also, so that any type of absence for that would also just be their sick leave that they also have.
Yeah, I think that the issue would be is like, you know, we've done something that no one else does in terms of extending this, but at a certain point, you know, if you just have a child, if you're an employee and you have 2 or 3 children, you're dealing with some of the same things. And, you know, and I think like also, you know, just for the good order of the school, sometimes it's like, I would say one of the biggest pushbacks we've got, not pushbacks, but concerns for principals is with a year of intermittent leave. We want our employees to have intermittent leave, but then it's also hard to staff around some of those things too. And I think this kind of provides a balance to account for it, but also, because I mean, you know, we do also, I think one of the things that we don't get enough credit for as a district are the benefits that we put in place, you know, with 12.5 sick days and personal leave days. And, you know, and most principals at a school will work. I know, like, I would always, you know, if you could schedule an appointment during your planning period or get somebody to cover a class, we'd work that out. So, I mean, we can certainly dig into that, Mr. Lancaster, and see what we can find if there's some options there. But I do know that it's proven challenging, you know, getting interims, getting subs for a certain time. I think the predictability in terms of being able to know, like, well, it's going to be a week, and we're going to hit all of our doctor's appointments during this week for all the children. I think that would be helpful to the school.
I'm not necessarily advocating one way. I'm just more trying to understand, like, you know, the situations that happen, and what the, for lack of a better thing, cost benefit from, not
Right.
only cost, but from a, you know, the,
Yeah. Well, I just think it, you know, the one thing we all know is when you're raising kids, illnesses never come at an opportune time. And, you know, it's, I agree. I wish there was, you know, we can definitely look into it and see what options we can find out, Mr. Lancaster.
I just don't want to, I guess my main, you know, the main thing is with foster and guardianship both,
Yeah.
you know, I just know there's potential issues that come up that are
Mhm.
like hard to schedule in a 1 week walk, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the only,
Yeah, and I think that they would still have, you know, the potentiality to take FMLA if necessary. Like, the good thing is we put a whole lot of different safeguards in to help out our employees with children, whether it's you know, whether it's natural or foster or guardian, whatever we've got a lot of support in there.
yeah, and I mean, I'm, you know, I've advocated for the fostering, and, you know, I had an issue with where the guardianship came up from someone that reached out, and I appreciate the flexibility in the adding the language.
Yeah.
Because, you know, at the end of the day, I think it shows, you know, that we're committed to our employees in these type of situations. You know, as I've told the, you know, the employees that reached out both times, I'm like, hey, I commend you for doing what you're doing, and then the biggest thing is we want to work with you as much as possible to, you know, help you along. So, just I appreciate what both of y'all have done as far as that goes.
Anything else? All right, that's the last item on the agenda. So thank you guys very much. Appreciate you guys' attendance tonight. I know we had some out for some different reasons, but thank you guys for being here, and I appreciate the conversation. With that, meeting adjourned.